One name. Out of 200, heaven reached down and singled out a single name for a sentence harsher than all the rest, and laid at his feet a charge that should have belonged to every one of them. The whole earth corrupted. All sin, ascribed to one being alone. 200 angels broke the boundary between worlds that night on the mountain. Only one was bound hand and foot in the desert and made to carry the guilt of everything that came after. His name was Azazel, and what he taught mankind was not one crime among many. It was the blueprint for every crime that followed. When the Watchers came down on Mount Hermon, they did not arrive empty-handed. They brought heaven's knowledge with them. Secrets that belonged to the courts above, carried down into the valleys and pressed into the hands of creatures who were never meant to hold them. But the oldest account does not spread the blame evenly across all 200. It opens its ledger of forbidden teaching with one figure, and it lingers on him before it names a single other. The Book of Enoch, chapter 8, begins the curriculum with Azazel. And the first thing on the list is the sword. He taught men to make swords. He taught them knives. He taught them shields and breastplates, armor, the craft of war, fought blow against counterblow. He drew the secret of metal out of heaven and showed mortal hands how to pull a blade from the earth and beat it into an edge. Picture the first sword ever forged, a length of bronze drawn glowing from the coals by a broad-shouldered figure at an anvil, hammered straight, then ground and polished until the metal threw back the firelight like still water, bright enough that a man leaning close could see his own face staring back out of the blade. Before that night, the worst a man could do to his neighbor was a sharpened stone and his own 2 hands. After it, he held a tool whose only purpose was to end another life and to do it well. And then, in the very same breath, in the very same verse, the account lists what else Azazel taught, not in a later chapter, not as a lesser, separate sin. Set down side by side with the blade. Bracelets, ornaments, the art of painting the eyes with antimony, the dark powder that lengthens a lash and deepens a stare, costly stones cut to catch the light, and the secret of dyes, the coloring that turns plain cloth into something that announces its wearer from across a crowded room. Read that list again, and your mind reaches for a seam in it, a point where the chapter should turn from the terrible to the trivial, from the machinery of war to the vanity of the mirror. There is no seam. The Book of Enoch sets the sword and the painted eye inside one unbroken sentence, because to whoever preserved this account, they were not 2 lessons. They were one lesson, taught twice. This was not a weapons lecture with a strange footnote about cosmetics. Beauty and violence were not opposite ends of his teaching. They were sisters, born in the same workshop, from the same forbidden fire, out of a single idea. And the idea was power. Think about what a blade and a painted face actually share. A sword is a tool for bending the world by force, for taking what someone would never hand over freely. The painted eye, the ornament, the dyed robe, that is a tool for bending how the world sees you, for compelling a response the bare face could not command on its own. One conquers the body, the other conquers the gaze. Both are technologies of dominion. Both replace what a person was born with and engineer something built to overpower. The warrior forces submission with iron, the adorned forces it with allure. Azazel handed mankind both on the same night, in the same lesson, because he understood they were the same weapon pointed in 2 directions. Imagine the world the morning after that knowledge spread. A man who had never owned anything sharper than a flint now stood holding a polished edge and felt, for the first time in human history, that he could simply take. A woman who had washed in a river and seen only her own plain reflection now lined her eyes in black and watched a room turn toward her. The whole texture of human life changed in a generation. Desire became a thing you could manufacture. So did death. There is a detail buried in the law of Moses that almost no one connects to this fallen angel, and once you have seen it, you cannot look away from it. Leviticus chapter 16 describes the holiest ritual of the ancient world, the Day of Atonement. The one day a year the high priest could carry the sins of an entire nation before God. 2 goats were chosen, lots were cast over them. One goat was for the Lord, and the other goat verse 8, verse 10, was sent away, alive, into the wilderness for Azazel. It was driven out into the desert, carrying upon its head every sin of the people, abandoned in the wasteland that the fallen one was said to inhabit. That lone goat, driven alive into the wasteland, is the origin of the scapegoat itself. And it means the name of Azazel was not quietly forgotten as a footnote in an old book. It was sewn into the central rite of atonement itself. The wilderness as his address, sin as his cargo, sent back to him year after year. Even the law that condemned him admitted where the corruption had come from. So when judgment finally came, it came for him first, and it came hardest. The Book of Enoch, chapter 10, preserves the sentence. God speaks to the angel Raphael and says, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness. Make an opening in the desert, in a place the text names Dudael, and throw him in. Cover him with jagged rocks, lay sharp stones over his face, and let him stay there in the black, alone, until the great day of judgment, when he will be cast into the fire." Picture that prison. Not a throne, not a battlefield, not even a cell with walls a being could rage against. Only a pit torn open in empty desert. A single broad-shouldered figure with long black hair and dark, ruined armor pinned beneath jagged stone, his face pressed into the dark. The one who taught the world to forge bright blades and gleaming ornaments was sealed away in the one place no light would ever catch metal again. Buried under the very earth he had taught mankind to break open. And then comes the line that should stop you cold. The whole earth, the account says, has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. And to him ascribe all sin, not his share of it, all of it. 200 watchers broke their oath and came down. Dozens of them taught forbidden things. And yet the verdict gathers the whole flood of human corruption and sets it on one being's shoulders, names him the source, and seals him under the desert to wait. Why him? Why the harshest cell, the heaviest charge, when he was one rebel among 200? Because the others taught men what to think. Azazel taught them what to make. The forbidden arts the rest handed down, the reading of stars, the cutting of roots, the casting of spells, those were knowledge a man could refuse. But a sword, once it exists, does not wait to be believed in. An ornament, once it is desired, does not need a single word of persuasion. Azazel did not corrupt a generation. He built the machines that would corrupt every generation after it, automatically, forever. He gave sin a supply chain. And those two industries he opened on that mountain have never once closed. The world still runs on exactly the pair of things he taught. Look at the scale of it now. The nations of the earth pour more than $2 trillion every single year into weapons and armies. The blade, multiplied across continents, refined into something that can end not one life, but millions. And the global trade in beauty, the paint, the ornament, the engineered face, moves hundreds of billions more, an industry built on the same ancient promise that you can become powerful by becoming something other than what you are. Two of the largest engines of the modern economy. Both lit from the same forge, both still selling the same lesson 4,000 years on. So here is the part that turns from his story toward yours. You have looked into that polished blade your whole life without knowing its name. Every time you have reached for something to make a stranger turn your way, every time you have been tempted to take by force what was not offered freely, you have been standing at the edge of Azazel's anvil, holding the oldest tool he ever handed down. The face you arrange before you leave the house in the morning, and the will to dominate that flickers up when you do not get what you want. Those are not modern inventions. They are the two halves of a single lesson taught on a mountain by a being who understood us better than we are comfortable admitting. That is why this story still has teeth. We did not outgrow what Azazel taught, we industrialized it. And the fact that his name was bound under the desert, yet his curriculum runs the world to this day, tells you something the ancients wanted you to feel in your spine. The old powers were buried, but the things they built were not. They are in your hand right now. If that unsettles you, good. Subscribe to History Remembered and keep looking, because the questions only get deeper from here, and the answers are not where you were taught to expect them. Because here is what should keep you watching. Azazel taught the blade and the painted face, but he was only the first instructor, and the forge was only the first classroom. The Book of Enoch goes on to name the others, and what they handed down was stranger and darker than any weapon. One watcher taught the cutting of roots and the binding of spells, another the reading of the stars, another the signs of the sun and the moon, until mankind held the entire forbidden curriculum of heaven. Weapons were only the beginning. Next, we open the full syllabus of the Watchers, the forbidden arts that taught humanity to reach for powers that were never meant to be ours. Subscribe, and we will follow the trail further, because the deeper you dig into the ancient world, the clearer it becomes. The old powers never truly vanished. They were only forgotten.